we're talking about two things. One is text text we engage with in a number of ways. Things like a book we read all the way through. Things like a sign we read for quick information. But there are some texts that we read to gather the information that is relevant or interesting or important to us. And they're set up in such a way that we can skip most of the stuff that isn't interesting or useful to us. And there are a lot of examples of this. And on your project sheet, I have four of them, but one is a website homepage. This happens to be our local Washington Post. And here you can read the headline, a brief description, and if that article is important to you, you can click on it and go to the article in question. If not, you move on. Same is true of every menu you've ever seen. This happens to be from a local Arlington restaurant, and a good example is mussels. So, putting mussels by itself in a category, the restaurant is telling you that mussels are a specialty of the house. They don't just have mussels, they have several preparations for them. But you, as a diner, if you like mussels, you know it's a specialty because they're featuring it. But if you don't like mussels, you know this is a whole category of stuff you can skip. If you're sitting down to dinner and you're really hungry, you might think you want a hors d'oeuvre or a soup or a salad, so you might want to read this. If you're thinking you're not that hungry, I'll just have an entree, then this is a whole category of things you can skip. The top two examples happen to be my work. The left is a magazine table of contents. I don't know how many people actually read tables of contents, but if you do, some people certainly do, there are article names and topics, and you can go through them and see which look interesting to you. A former publication I worked with was a city paper in Washington, D.C., and this is a redesign of their listing section. And this is arranged by category of nightlife that you might go to. Music is first, and then day of the week. So the theory is you have some sense of what you want to see, how you want to spend your evening, and if you want to go out on, if it's Friday night and that's the night you want to go out, then what's happening Saturday, Sunday is completely of no use to you. So you go right for the day in question. So of all this information, you can narrow in pretty quickly on the information that is important to you. And this ran every week, and it was, for a time anyway, a good reason to pick up the publication is because in the pre-internet days, it gave you good information about what to do. Now, I happen to have this very text, and not just the text you see, but all of the text here. And I have it in this document. And this is the first and only document we work on this semester that is multiple pages. And we have this text that runs, and it starts with the music, but there's more than just music in this file. And it, for example, there's theater, and it in fact overflows this space. And so your goal will be to get everything that is in this document fitting in this number of columns, not adding more columns to them. And if you're looking at all this text, it probably seems like it's a whole lot of work to go through this and format it and turn it into a hierarchy. But let me assure you right now that it will be some work to get this hierarchy functional and looking good. It is not going to be particularly more work to format all of this text than it would be to format a single item in this text. And that's because each one of these pieces is affiliated already with a style sheet. So let me just click on that and click on paragraph styles. And again, you may not see this if you're in the basics workspace, which is why I encourage typography or advanced workspaces for everything you do in this class. But we click here and we see the music is listed as an event type. And I move my cursor down, and this is a day week. That's the day of the week the event is. This is the music type, and this is the listing text. And there are a couple other styles here, but those are the main ones we're going to look at in terms of paragraph styles. Now, I should say that paragraph styles are fairly complex, and it takes a while to learn all their subtleties, but in a basic way, as a beginner, you can start to use them right away, and they're fairly simple at a basic level, which is what we'll be looking at them as today. And they're easy enough to make, and you don't have to do anything special to make them. You just have to make some decisions. So let me just make a quick style sheet first to show you how they're made. I'm just going to say sample, and this is just as whatever this was default set up to do is text. Let's first take this and make a couple of decisions about it. I'm going to switch over to my character settings, and let's just pick a font for this. Let's say Extenda. I think that's, let's pick something else. How about the Didone there? And I'm going to make it bigger. Let's just say 30 point. And I think I'm also, it looks a little bit loose to me. You see, this is probably not the best design typeface, but I'm going to stick with it. But I'm seeing some fairly big gaps in the space, so I am just going to tighten this up a little bit so it's not so loose. And there we have it. So I'm just going to make sure my cursor is in here anywhere. And I'm going to say new paragraph style. And we have not done a whole lot to this, but everything we have done I can see right here. So it says K22 Didone. It says size 30 and tracking -30. Now I always give my style sheets a name. You see it comes with a name built in, paragraph style 1. The trouble is, if you're using your style sheet again in a week or a month or whenever it is you need it, if all your style sheets are named paragraph style 1, paragraph style 2, style 3, you're not going to remember probably what they are for. So this is my sample style, just to demonstrate how they're made. I'm going to say sample, and I'm going to say OK. And now we can make another text box. We can type bird, or whatever word we want, and there it is. We didn't make a lot of decisions about those, but we made a few, and we could see that the tracking rather is -30, and the size is 30. So let's move these just over to the side, and let's focus on these guys. And I think I'll just take these one at a time. And I'm going to follow more or less the decisions I made here. So music is biggest, so I'm going to leave that at biggest. This is second biggest, and then I'm going to go down through that. That wouldn't have to be necessarily the way anyone does that, but I think that makes sense to me. And so that's the decisions I'm going to follow. Let's get rid of that. And let's return here. So my music was big, so I'm just going to use my key command, shift command on a Mac, and my right caret, and make this bigger. And we could see that this is 25 on 12. And let's change the font to and I'd like you to make your own decisions about these. I'm just going to switch that to Aachen. And now I am going to look at my style sheet, and it says event type, and I'm seeing a little plus next to the event type. And all that means is that it's no longer the pure style. I've made some changes to it, so it's not as it was. If I click on the next style below, which I've done nothing to, day, week, and there's no plus. That's because it's unchanged. And the same is true, listing type, no plus. But here I see a little plus, and I am going to, well, I could do two couple things. If I decide, I don't like what I did, I can say clear overrides, and it goes back to the base style. But I actually want to do something else. I am going to say redefine style. And now, anytime this style appears in the document, I am going to, it's going to populate throughout this document. So let's try that with this one. Let's make this, I think I'll just use verb, which you probably do not have on your computer, but that's one decision I'll make. I am going to make it all caps. I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger too, just a speck. And I'm going to give it a color. And I could give it a pre-existing color like cyan. That looks okay. But I think I'm going to define a new color for it. So I'm going to go to swatches, new color swatch. And I think I'm going to make it something more in the red area. So I'm going to mix in some magenta and some yellow, basically like mixing an orangey red, maybe just a little bit of black to darken it a bit. And let's say okay. And there it is. And I'm going to accept that. So I'm going to go to my paragraph style again. And we see that little plus telling us I've modified that style. And I'm going to say redefine style. And now that decisions are populated all through this document. And so my category is rock. Let's go to verb again. And black, I think I'll keep it at black. But this one I'm going to make a little bit smaller. So let's redefine that style. And you can just see even on the screen, this style repeats so much that we can see those repeating over again. Now the goal is to get all of this information, which includes music and also a couple other things, populating in the selected column. So I know I'm going to have to make this one quite a bit bigger. And for things like listing, you probably can get quite a bit smaller. So let's try 8 point. And I'm going to have to change my leading. I may have to go back and change some of my other leadings too. But let's make this 8 on, let's try 9.5. And for reasons that'll become clear in a minute, I'm going to select part of this that is not at the top. And I'm going to say redefine style. And now you can see all this information is populating through this. And we are getting closer to fitting, but we're still not quite fitting in all of this. So we probably have to adjust that a little bit later. But I will leave you to work that out once we've gone through all the basics. So there's something else in here, which is part of the hierarchy, is something that doesn't control the whole paragraph. So if we turn on our invisibles, basically everything from the beginning of this paragraph to this invisible character, which indicates the end of the paragraph, is the same. So we have controlled this all with a paragraph level style sheet, but sometimes you have a character style. And this one is listing bold head, happens to be part of that. And so this is now Myriad Pro. I left it at the Myriad Pro. I would probably change that if I was doing this for real, but let's make this listing bold head Myriad Pro bold. And we can do exact same thing. we have that character style sheet and the little plus. And now I can just say redefine style, and that's now populating all through this document. Let's make this consistent with what I'm doing. So let's just make this instead verb, light, and let's, we need to go back to paragraph styles. Let's say redefine style. And then let's just make that the verb bold, and go to back to my character style and say redefine style again. And you can see it all change across the screen sort of instantly. And there it is. And there are a couple of soft returns snuck in here, but that's not a huge problem. And so here it is. Now there's something else I want to change, which is a look at my spacing. So right now, all of these listings, all throughout this document, are kind of jammed up together. And I want to make sure that I have just a little bit of space between listings. So I'm going to go back to my paragraph control. And I want to put, now if I just take this and I increase the spacing, my leading, then everything in the paragraph is going to spread out. But what I want in this case is a little bit of space between paragraphs. So I'm going to go to my space after paragraph, and I'm going to add just a little bit. Let's try 2 points. And there it is. I think that's good enough to just have a little bit of a visual disconnect between these so that the reader will know when one begins and when ends. So I'm going to go back to the paragraph style, listing text, and I'm going to say redefine, and this whole thing spreads out a little bit. Let's look at some of our other spacing. So my day of the week seems awfully close to the listing that comes before it. So it's not really noticeable with this one after the big head. That spacing looks okay to me, but here it's a little bit tight. So I'm going to take this guy, and you can do the exact same thing as you did after paragraph. You can also add a little space above a paragraph. I think it's going to need to be a little bit more than 2. Let's just take a look at it visually. I'm just using my up arrow to add it. 4 looks pretty good. So let's redefine that style again. And you saw that guy change to conform, and this changed all through this. That's a little bit light, but good enough. And then we come to theater here, and this is my next major category after music. So what I didn't see, because this one sort of kicks off the section, is that I also need a little bit more space above theater. So let me highlight theater, and I'm going to add some space above that too, so it's not crashing into what goes above it. So that looks okay. If we go back to the project sheet, you'll see there's also a rule above the music, and that would have populated throughout the whole section. You can actually build a rule into a style sheet as well, but I think I've thrown enough at you for one day. So let's again redefine this style. And now whenever this format appears, there'll be that little bit of extra space. So that doesn't affect this one. I mean, it would if there was something above it, but because it's at the top of the text frame, it's still at the top of the text frame. But if we copy this and put it above it, then we see that that space would match. But we don't actually need that there, so I'll undo that. So this is going to take a little bit of work to get this all fitting in the frame, but it's doable because it worked with the original styles. And you may find that you have to go back and forth a little bit. Some of your spacing decisions that you make that look okay now, once this guy gets smaller, once these sizes get adjusted, you may have to go back and see some of those. Once this is smaller, the 2 points between these items, if that's what you use, and you don't have to use, you're encouraged to use different numbers than me, but you might find that those have to be adjusted. So that's the project today, is to harness the power of style sheets to format this listing section and get it all fitting in. I think we have a total of 9 frames, and there is something else that will come into play. It's readings or comedy, or there's a couple other sections that come into play. And that is today's project.